Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei, coming to you live from Beijing on CGTN. Coming up on today's program, the foreign ministers of China, Afghanistan and Pakistan met in Beijing to deepen trilateral cooperation. Will this dialogue help bring stability to the region? Adventure films have been riding a wave of China's interest in both movies and the outdoors. We speak to a pair of adventure filmmakers to see what goes on behind the scenes. World Insight. The first round of the China-Afghanistan-Pakistan Trilateral Foreign Ministers Dialogue is being held in Beijing this week. Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi met his Afghan and Pakistani counterparts. At the press conference following the talks, the three sides agreed to use this dialogue as an opportunity to increase mutual trust and deepen cooperation.
China is seeking to bring two neighbors closer. Afghan and Pakistani foreign ministers met in Beijing to overcome friction and secure closer security cooperation. Their Chinese counterpart Wang Yi said this initiative will bring tangible results.
The three parties agreed that on the basis of 5 principles of peaceful coexistence, this dialogue will be taken as an opportunity to increase mutual trust and deepen cooperation. Under the framework of Belt and Road Initiative, 3 countries will work together to promote connectivity as well as shared prosperity and common development.
Afghanistan and Pakistan are subject to frequent terrorist attacks. They blame each other for that violence. As an outcome of this dialogue, the ministers agreed to promote an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned peace and reconstruction process involving the Taliban. They also pledged to cooperate in a range of fields like the economy, military, intelligence, and refugees.
We appreciate China's sincere support to Afghanistan's sovereignty, independence, and territorial integrity, as well as our peace and development efforts. I would also like to express profound gratitude to China for the generous assistance to our reconstruction efforts in the past 15 years.
I believe this forum will go a long way in joint efforts for bringing lasting peace in Afghanistan and enhancing cooperation among our 3 countries.
The foreign ministers agreed to hold a second trilateral dialogue in Afghanistan in the coming year and make it a routine mechanism benefiting growth amongst the 3 countries.
For more on the first round of China, Afghanistan, Pakistan Trilateral Foreign Ministers Dialogue, we are joined in our Beijing studio by Wenping, professor at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Meanwhile, in Islamabad, Pakistan, we have Sultan Hali, who's a defense and security analyst from that country. I want to welcome both of you. First of all, Mr. Hali, help us to understand how significant this is going to be for Pakistan, which is now being categorized in many different ways by the United States related to terrorism.
Well, thank you very much for having me on your show. I would like to make it very clear that ever since President Trump has taken over, he has singled out Pakistan to perhaps make it a scapegoat for the U.S. failures in Afghanistan. And in the bargain, there is a trust deficit between Afghanistan and Pakistan, which has only deepened, and the fissures have widened in the near past. But the shuttle diplomacy carried out by the Chinese foreign minister by visiting Kabul as well as Islamabad and now hosting this trilateral is a very positive step, because it has provided us with a platform where the 2 countries, that is Afghanistan and Pakistan, will be able to work on sinking their differences, and with China's support, and as you rightly mentioned, all the 5 aspects of economy, military, intelligence, refugees, etc. This will enable us to build on that trust and try and get back peace into the region. Now, you see, when I say that, it must be remembered that peace in Afghanistan is essential for peace in Pakistan.
We are going to talk about that issue later in our program, but first of all, let me also go to you as well, Ms. He. This is a very interesting occasion because it used to be the participation of the United States as well. This time we see trilateral.
Yeah, this is very unique this time because this is the very first time between those three countries. The reason why China now is serving as a very active mediator, I think it's first of all China have bordering with those two. We have a lot of leverage, trying to persuading those two countries closer. And secondly, as our Pakistan friend mentioned, because the Trump administration with this issue, this new Afghanistan strategy months ago by the President Trump, he has already given a very strong criticism on Pakistan. It seems to him Pakistan hasn't done a lot of, hasn't done like a contribution to the problem. It's not a problem solution. It's a problem maker. So that makes Pakistan is in a very, I think, a difficult situation for for those hosting those counter-lateral meeting used to have.
However, both sides, or rather the three sides, China, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, have all said very clearly this is not targeting at any other party than the three countries. Having said that, though, one of the most important things is about the China-Pakistan economic corridor. Mr. Hali, you know that was kind of controversy because there were some kinds of territorial disputes between Pakistan and India. However, China and Pakistan has reached an agreement as part of the Belt and Road Initiative. Help us understand how will the China-Pakistan economic corridor extend itself now further into Afghanistan, and what it would mean for the region?
It's a very good question and a very important aspect which you have brought out. I would like to make it very clear that, you see, indeed, part of the China-Pakistan economic corridor runs through a disputed territory between India and Pakistan, for which the Indian Prime Minister had already raised objections, but President Xi Jinping had rejected those objections, stating that the China-Pakistan economic corridor is a corridor for bringing prosperity and development to the region and not a strategic corridor. Secondly, the aspect of development, you see, is something which is extremely dear to both the impoverished nations of Afghanistan and Pakistan, and if they are brought together onto this particular Belt and Road Initiative, Pakistan is already a signatory, and in fact work is in a very high state of fruition. The long-term plans have recently been unveiled, in which Afghanistan could have been bypassed because the road runs from the maritime port of Gwadar to the Chinese city of Kashgar in the province of Xinjiang. But China, in its magnanimity, has offered it to Afghanistan to become a part of this initiative so that its own people can benefit and they can come on board and also reap huge benefits from this particular project.
I see. From the Chinese perspective, Ms. He, what about the investment that is likely to put into for this corridor? And now if extended further into Afghanistan, and the gains. Meanwhile, how to look at the so-called the security issue and the so-called along the corridor, many of the complicated diplomatic and economic issue. How shall we take all of them in at the same time for further serious consideration?
Yes, indeed. You know, the opportunities and the chances are always hand in hand with those risks. You know, even in Pakistan, this corridor building itself has already generated a lot of security concern. I think now, at the moment, there are as many as 10,000 Chinese workers now working in different projects around the corridor, and the Pakistan side even provided as many as 10,000 those security, you know, the troops to offer the protection. So which means the risk issue is there. So not mentioning Afghanistan, I think the security situation in Afghanistan is even more severe than the situation in Pakistan. So that's why, that's also exactly why China would like to extend this corridor building to the Afghanistan, because only through this infrastructure connectivity that will bring the more economic benefits to the people on the ground, which has been served as a basis for any other political trust building between those two countries, among even with China, and also can guarantee and those security building. So those three things are intertwined with each other. So we would like to take those risks.
Not only the corridor issue is being discussed, but more importantly, the issue of against the terrorism. As we talk about security, terrorism issue is an important one in the region. How can the three countries correlate with one another to fight against terrorism? Every one of the three countries face the threat from terrorism. Mr. Hali, do you think this mechanism so far has figured out some specifics? What are these specifics?
Well, the specifics are, to start with, all three countries, China, Pakistan and Afghanistan, which happen to be next door neighbors to each other, have faced the threat from the scourge of terrorism. The Uyghurs from China, some of the misled ones, they take refuge in Afghanistan, they get training into militancy, and they come and try and create problems in China. While there are terrorists hiding in Afghanistan who come and attack Pakistan, or at least they use Afghanistan as a launching pad. Now, you see the mechanism that is being put in place, and especially this particular trilateral, it was very rightly pointed out that it will be a step-by-step approach, but one of the aspects which has been brought out is that there will be a senior military officer placed in the headquarters in Kabul and in Islamabad, who will be monitoring the security situation, and with the overarching support of China, we will be able to tackle the scourge of terrorism. Now, Pakistan has had more than 14 years of experience in fighting terrorism. It cannot match the wisdom of China, because I've toured the whole of Xinjiang province, where the problem has been tackled with an iron fist, as well as providing job opportunities to the Uyghurs. But with China's experience, Pakistan's very rich experience in combating terrorism, and Afghanistan's willingness to join in, we should be able to tackle the scourge of terrorism and ensure that this particular project, and for that matter, the whole region, should get rid of terrorism.
Ms. He, we see the very clear signs of so-called America withdrawal from different parts of the world, or thinking about America first, mainly thinking about American interest beyond any other's interest, and not necessarily playing a previous role internationally. So in this part of the world, Afghanistan, Pakistan, the issue of terrorism has always been haunting for some time already. Will this kind of trilateral framework in the future work? Will the slow process of building up the economic wealth and prosperity of this region be able to match the challenge of terrorism in this region? As we all know, if people's lives are getting better, if people are enjoying prosperous lives, they are unlikely to bow to the belief of terrorism. So what do you make of this?
Well, I think as this first foreign ministers meeting has said already, three issues we have to put them together. One is political trust, especially between Pakistan and Afghanistan. Another is the economic cooperation. The third one is anti-terror. So all those three things, you cannot separate them one by one. So anti-terror, if you don't have those political trust, it's almost impossible, because now those two countries mutually accuse each other, saying each other supporting those terrorist activity in their own territory. So that's why this anti-terror issue cannot make a great, the progress. So first, the political mutual trust between those two countries now needs to be improved. And then the anti-terror. So anti-terror includes a lot of things, like my Pakistan colleague mentioned, information sharing, intelligence sharing, so, and also even joint those drills. So all those things, you have to build on those political trust. And then, of course, coming together with this corridor building, I think that will also add some benefits for all other two.
Okay. Besides this, the three countries are also talking about even extend further, not only including Afghanistan into the China-Pakistan economic corridor, but extend it further even into the West and Central Asian Economic Corridor. It seems that things are getting ever bigger. The pies are all connecting with one another. Under these bigger circumstances, Mr. Hali, what do you think is the significance of these three countries now working on this platform beginning from this year, vis-a-vis the bigger picture of the really bigger region in Central and Asia and Central and Western Asia?
Well, you see, when President Xi Jinping unveiled his program for the Belt and Road Initiative, of which China-Pakistan Economic Corridor is but one portion, although it is the flagship project, he had envisioned that this particular project is not going to be limited to only China and Pakistan, but also benefit the Central Asian countries, northwards to Europe, to Africa, and then with the maritime Silk Route, it is likely to encompass all the other major countries of the region. Now, having said that, the problem is that there are detractors of this project because it's a mega project, and some people who believe in their minds, because of their own imperial mindset, they think that China is having hegemonistic ideologies in spreading this kind of a project. They are sadly mistaken because they have not read the history of China, because China has itself suffered at the hands of imperialist powers, and it does not want any nation of the world to share the same fate where another country occupies it or imposes its will upon the other. China has made progress in leaps and bounds in the last 3.5 decades, and it does not want to live and rest on its laurels by being a rich neighbor, but it wants to share its largesse and munificence, because it knows that if its neighborhood is peaceful, if it is developed, and if it is able to stand on its own feet, then peace will return to the entire region, and that is where China is playing a very important role, and it should not be misunderstood by anyone.
Ms. He, on the one hand, China is eager to build partnerships with countries and regions in order to increase connectivity, as indicated by the Belt and Road Initiative. On the other hand, China has to understand very clearly the nature of different kinds of partnership and to what extent China will be able to participate in this partnership for its own interests and for the interests of most of those participating countries and players. Do you think China understands this balance well?
Well, I think China is learning how to understand those balance in a very good way. You know, nothing is perfect at the very beginning. So I think so far, because the Belt and Road Initiative has been put forward for 4 years already, and this late May, we have already taken place this first One Belt, One Road Summit in Beijing. So from those participation from all over the world, I think 29 those heads of state, they have already joined. So you see this Belt and Road one now has been, I think, widely welcomed by all of the countries, especially around those Belt and Road initiative, those road way. So which means this is, you know, trade and economic cooperation initiative. It's not somebody thinking like hegemonism or trying to have their own strategic meaning or building some military bases around this road. So 4 years building has already proved now China is willing to do the more investment to build those infrastructure connectivity, and also to build more those harbor or the trade road to push those trade forward, especially this inclusive globalization forward. So which is the things I think a global economy very much needed so far.
But Ms. He, as you may know, even though China is not claiming anybody as the rival or as the enemy, there are those who claim China as their enemy or as their rival. For example, in the latest national security strategy published by the United States recently, China, together with Russia, has been categorized as a strategic rival or a competitive rival in a way. Meanwhile, Pakistan, the country itself, has also been portrayed in that national strategic strategy in the United States in a very different light compared to, let's just say, when this war in Afghanistan started, in which Pakistan worked with the United States. So how shall we understand the bigger circumstances, and how will that big circumstance interact with the kind of plan that countries including China, Pakistan, and Afghanistan have in mind for the future? Ms. He, very briefly from you first.
Yeah, this new American strategic report, I think even though they have named China as the competitor, strategic competitor, but from the perspective of China, I think we need to regard the U.S. as our cooperator. I don't think we need to take the same approach like to United States as they did to us. So we need to have a more open, mind. And just like President Xi mentioned in the Davos meeting earlier this year, because now China is driving our train. This train is called One Belt, One Road forward. And we are not mind any other country, any other people coming to join us on our train. It's a free rider is welcome. So not like, some U.S., those politicians saying they reject those free rider. Even like the Trump administration ask anybody to pay, always calling for the money issue. So we are saying, all right, join us, free rider, welcome. So this is an open, I think, attitude, just like the Belt Road Initiative saying inclusive. Anybody, if you want to join, you are in. If you don't want to join, all right, you are free to go.
All right. Mr. Hali, final words from you as well. Two things. One is the so-called Indo-Pacific. That's the strategy described by the current administration in the United States. Secondly, Pakistan being portrayed quite in a dark light in that national security strategy as well from Washington. Mr. Hali, small picture, bigger circumstance. Exactly your thought.
Well, my thoughts are very clear on this, that Pakistan has sacrificed tremendously in the so-called war on terror, which was initiated by the United States and the NATO allies. But when the going got difficult for the United States and for its allies in Afghanistan, they started to look for scapegoats, and Pakistan seemed to be a convenient scapegoat. The previous administrations of Bush and Obama were critical of Pakistan, but President Trump, unfortunately, is a different person altogether, who is not even being taken very seriously by his own administration. And he is jumping to conclusions, issuing threats, which is, you see, very unfortunate, whereas Pakistan can be part of the solution and not be part of the problem. And you see, the China-Pakistan relationship is not a zero-sum game.
I see. Sultan Hali, Wenping, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.